Jake Morrison wiped the grease from his hands and stared at the broken engine core that had left him stranded on Kepler 7 trade station. The cargo ship New Horizon sat in the repair bay like a wounded bird, her fusion drive completely dead after a cascade failure in the plasma injectors. Jake had been hauling mining equipment to the outer colonies when everything went wrong, and now he was stuck on this remote station in the middle of nowhere. The station buzzed with activity as dozens of alien species conducted their business. Jake watched tall, reptilian saurians haggle with short, furry Velkan traders while spider-like arachnids skittered between stalls selling exotic goods. The air smelled of ozone and unfamiliar spices, and the constant chatter of translator devices created a background hum that never stopped. Jake had been on Kepler 7 for 3 days waiting for replacement parts to arrive from the core worlds. The station manager, a gruff saurian named Corex, had made it clear that humans were barely tolerated here. Most aliens saw humans as newcomers to the galactic community, useful for manual labor but not much else. Jake didn't mind the attitude. He just wanted to fix his ship and get back to work. On his 4th morning, Jake heard a commotion near the medical bay. A crowd of aliens had gathered around something, their voices raised in what sounded like an argument. Jake's curiosity got the better of him, and he pushed through the crowd to see what was happening. On the floor lay a young alien unlike any Jake had seen before. The being appeared to be made of living crystal, his translucent blue form flickering, weakly like a dying light bulb. Pale energy veins ran through his body, but they were dark now, filled with some kind of black substance that pulsed slowly through his system. A saurian in medical robes stood over the crystal being, his scaled, hands held up in a gesture of dismissal. "Nothing can be done for a Catharian with mineral poisoning," the doctor said coldly. "Their kind chose to live in harmony with toxic crystals. Now they must face the consequences. I will not waste medical supplies on a dying pacifist." The crowd began to disperse, muttering among themselves. Jake heard fragments of conversation about how Catharians were weak, how they deserved their fate for refusing to develop proper technology, how their pacifist ways made them useless in the modern galaxy. The crystal being's light grew dimmer, with each passing moment. Jake knelt beside the alien, whose large, multifaceted eyes focused on him with obvious effort. The being tried to speak, but only a faint whisper emerged. Jake activated his universal translator and caught the words, "Help me," repeated over and over. "What's your name?" Jake asked gently. "Zeth," the alien whispered, his voice like wind chimes. In a gentle breeze, Jake looked around at the departing crowd, then back at Zeth. The young Catharian was clearly dying, and nobody seemed to care. Jake had always believed that when someone needed help, you helped them, regardless of who they were or where they came from. His parents had taught him that simple lesson back on Earth, and it had served him well throughout his life. "I'm going to try to help you, Zeth," Jake said. "I'm not a doctor, but maybe I can figure something out." Zeth's crystalline features shifted in what might have been surprise. "You would help a stranger?" Jake nodded and carefully lifted Zeth, surprised at how light the crystal being was. He carried him back to the New Horizon and laid him on the small medical bed in the ship's tiny sick bay. Jake's ship wasn't equipped for alien medicine, but he had access to the station's database through his ship's computer. For the next 6 hours, Jake studied everything he could find about Catharian physiology. The database entries were limited, mostly describing Catharians as a peaceful species that lived in harmony with their crystal homeworld. They absorbed energy directly from their environment and could manipulate various forms of radiation, but their bodies were vulnerable to certain mineral compounds that disrupted their energy matrix. The poisoning was caused by exposure to corrupted crystals that leaked toxic compounds into Catharian energy pathways. Traditional galactic medicine had no cure because most species didn't understand how Catharian biology worked. The poison would slowly shut down Zeth's energy flow until his light went out forever. Jake stared at the data, his engineer's mind working through the problem. If the poison was a mineral compound disrupting energy flow, then maybe it could be neutralized by something that bonded with those minerals. He pulled up chemical databases and cross-referenced them with the ship's supply manifest. Hours passed as Jake worked through possibilities. Zeth drifted in and out of consciousness, his light growing weaker. Jake brought him water and tried to keep him comfortable, but he could see time running out. The black veins in Zeth's crystal body had spread further, and his breathing was becoming more labored. Then Jake found something interesting in the industrial supply database. The ship's cleaning systems used a compound called triaxium sulfate to break down mineral deposits in the water recyclers. The chemical was designed to bond with and neutralize various mineral contaminants. Jake wondered if it might work on the poison in Zeth's system. The problem was dosage and delivery. Too much would kill Zeth instantly, too little would be useless. Jake needed to modify the water recycling system to create a very dilute solution and find a way to introduce it into Zeth's energy matrix without causing more damage. Jake worked through the night, dismantling parts of the water recycler and rebuilding them into a makeshift treatment device. He created a system that could produce precisely measured amounts of the neutralizing compound suspended in a solution that Catharian physiology could absorb. The device looked like something built from spare parts because that's exactly what it was. By morning, Jake was exhausted but ready to try. Zeth was barely conscious, his light now just a faint glow. Jake explained what he wanted to do, and Zeth weakly agreed to the treatment. They both knew it was probably their only chance. Jake activated the device and watched as the diluted compound flowed through transparent tubes into contact points on Zeth's crystal form. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the black veins in. Zeth's body began to change, the poison slowly neutralizing as the compound did its work. Over the next few hours, Zeth's light grew stronger. The black substance in his veins broke apart and was absorbed harmlessly into his system. By evening, Zeth was sitting up and speaking clearly, his crystal form glowing with healthy blue-white light. "You saved my life," Zeth said, his voice filled with wonder. "No one has ever shown such kindness to a Catharian stranger." Jake shrugged and began cleaning up the medical equipment. "You needed help, so I helped. That's what people do." But as Jake would soon learn, that simple act of human kindness was about to change everything. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison left Kepler 7 station with his cargo ship running better than ever. The replacement parts for the New Horizon had finally arrived, and Jake had completed his delivery to the outer colonies before taking on new cargo runs throughout the frontier systems. He thought about Zeth sometimes, wondering how the young Catharian was doing, but Jake had moved on to other jobs and other places. Jake was hauling agricultural equipment to a farming colony when his ship's communication system picked up an incoming transmission on a rarely used frequency. The message was in perfect English, which surprised him since he was deep in alien space where few beings bothered to learn human languages. "Human vessel New Horizon, this is Catharian ship Crystal Wind requesting permission to approach," came, the familiar sound of wind chimes that Jake remembered as Zeth's voice. Jake nearly dropped his coffee mug. He quickly activated the comm system and replied, "Crystal Wind, this is Jake Morrison aboard New Horizon. Zeth, is that really you?" "Yes, my friend Jake. I have been searching for you for many weeks. May I come aboard your ship? I have something important to share with you." Jake checked his sensors and spotted a small crystalline vessel approaching from his starboard side. The ship looked like it was grown rather than built, its surface reflecting light in beautiful patterns that shifted as it moved. Jake had never seen a Catharian ship before, and he was amazed by its elegant design. "You're cleared to dock, Crystal Wind. It's good to hear from you again." 20 minutes later, Jake was greeting Zeth in the New Horizon's small cargo bay. The young Catharian looked healthy and strong, his crystal form glowing with vibrant energy. Zeth moved with a grace that Jake remembered, but there was something different about him now, a sense of purpose that hadn't been there before. "My friend, you look well," Zeth said, his translator converting his musical voice into English. "Your kindness saved more than just my life that day on Kepler 7. Jake felt embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what anyone would do. You needed help, so I helped." "How have you been?" Zeth's crystal features shifted, and what Jake had learned was the Catharian equivalent of a smile. "I have been very busy, Jake Morrison. Your actions have created something wonderful among my people." "Let me show you." Zeth activated a small device that projected a holographic star map into the cargo bay. Jake could see several star systems highlighted in blue, with dotted lines connecting them in a network that stretched across a significant portion of space. "After you saved me, I returned to my homeworld and told my people what had happened," Zeth explained. "I told them about the human who helped a dying stranger without asking for anything in return. Many of my elders did not believe such kindness could exist between different species." Jake studied the star map, noting that most of the highlighted systems were in areas he knew to be populated by smaller, less powerful alien races. "What am I looking at here, Zeth?" "The beginning of something new," Zeth replied. "I traveled to other worlds and shared your story with anyone who would listen. I spoke to the Velkan traders who are cheated by larger corporations, the ethereal colonies that are ignored by the major powers, the insectoid Vex, whose manufacturing skills are exploited but never rewarded. I told them all about human kindness." Zeth manipulated the hologram, and Jake could see more details about each system. "Many species have been pushed to the edges of galactic society by the Draknari Empire and the Centauri Federation. We are considered lesser beings, useful only for labor or resources. But when I told them about you, something changed." Jake was starting to understand. "They began to work together." "Yes, exactly," Zeth said, his glow brightening with excitement. "If a human could show kindness to a stranger, then perhaps we could show kindness to each other. We formed an alliance based on mutual aid and cooperation. We call it the Morrison Compact, named after you." Jake felt his face grow warm. "Zeth, I don't deserve to have anything named after me. I just helped a friend." "And that is precisely why you deserve it," Zeth replied. "You see helping others as normal, but in this galaxy, such behavior is rare. The Morrison Compact has grown to include 47 different species across 83 star systems. We share resources, knowledge, and protection." Zeth showed Jake examples of what the Compact had accomplished. Catharian energy technology was helping ethereal colonies power their atmospheric processors. Vex manufacturing was producing tools and equipment for struggling farming worlds. Velkan traders were creating fair trade networks that benefited everyone involved rather than just the largest companies. "We are not trying to compete with the Empire or the Federation," Zeth explained. "We simply want to help each other survive and prosper. Your example showed us that cooperation is possible." Jake was amazed by what he was seeing. Dozens of species that had been marginalized or ignored were now working together to build something better. The holographic display showed trade routes, shared colonies, and joint research projects that were improving life for millions of beings. "This is incredible, Zeth. I had no idea that helping you would lead to something like this." Zeth reached into a pouch on his belt and pulled out a crystalline device about the size of Jake's fist. The crystal pulsed with soft blue light and felt warm to the touch when Zeth handed it to him. "This is a gift from my people to yours," Zeth said. "It is a Catharian energy matrix that will integrate with your ship's power systems. It will triple your energy efficiency and extend your range significantly. More importantly, it marks you as a friend to all members of the Morrison Compact." Jake turned the crystal over in his hands, feeling the energy flowing through it. "Zeth, this is too much. I can't accept something this valuable." "You can and you will," Zeth replied firmly. "Jake Morrison, you may not realize it, but your simple act of kindness has begun to change the galaxy. Word of the Morrison Compact is spreading to other regions. More species are asking to join us every week. What started with one human helping one Catharian is becoming a movement." Jake installed the energy matrix in his ship's power core with Zeth's help. The improvement in performance was immediate and dramatic. The New Horizons engines ran smoother and quieter, and his fuel consumption dropped by 2/3. The ship's computer systems reported efficiency levels that Jake had never seen before. "Now you can travel farther and faster than ever before," Zeth said. "I hope you will visit some of our member worlds and see what we are building together." Jake promised to do exactly that. As Zeth prepared to leave, he turned back to Jake with a serious expression. "My friend, I must warn you about something. The Morrison Compact has not gone unnoticed by the major powers. The Draknari Empire sees us as a potential threat to their expansion plans, and the Centauri Federation views us as competition for trade routes. They may try to cause trouble for us." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "What will you do if they try to stop you?" Zeth's crystal form flickered with determination. "We will continue to help each other, just as you helped me. Sometimes the smallest acts create the largest changes, and kindness is stronger than fear or greed." After Zeth departed, Jake sat in his pilot's chair looking out at the stars. He had always believed in doing the right thing, but he never imagined that helping one stranger could spark something this big. The Morrison Compact was proof that there were good people of every species in the galaxy, and that working together was better than fighting each other. Jake set course for the nearest compact world, eager to see firsthand what his simple act of kindness had helped create. 2 years had passed since Jake Morrison first learned about the Morrison Compact, and the changes across the galaxy were remarkable. What had started as a small alliance of forgotten species had grown into something that even the major powers could no longer ignore. Jake found himself spending more time in compact space than anywhere else, carrying supplies and messages between member worlds while serving as humanity's unofficial representative to the growing alliance. Jake's ship approached the planet New Haven, the first world jointly colonized by multiple compact species. From orbit, the planet looked like a patchwork of different environments, each section designed to meet the needs of different alien races. Catharian crystal gardens sparkled in the northern continent, while Vex hive cities formed geometric patterns in the eastern deserts. Ethereal floating platforms drifted through the southern atmosphere, and dozens of other species had claimed their own territories across the world's surface. The remarkable thing about New Haven was not just that so many different species lived there, but that they had worked together to make it possible. Catharian energy manipulation had powered the massive terraforming machines built by Vex Manufacturing. Ethereal atmospheric science had created breathable air for dozens of different species, while other compact members had contributed everything from soil treatment to weather control systems. Jake landed at the Central Spaceport, a facility that looked like it had been designed by committee, but somehow worked perfectly. Different architectural styles blended together in ways that shouldn't have made sense, but created something beautiful and functional. As he walked through the terminal, Jake heard dozens of languages being translated in real time, creating a constant buzz of communication between species that had never spoken to each other before joining the compact. Zeth was waiting for him. At the arrivals area, along with several other beings Jake had come to know over the past 2 years. There was Buzz, a Vex worker whose insectoid features had initially frightened Jake, but whose gentle personality had quickly won him over. Next to Buzz floated Whisper, an ethereal whose gaseous form shifted colors as she communicated through. Atmospheric pressure changes that Jake's translator converted to speech. "Welcome to New Haven, Jake Morrison," Zeth said, his crystal form glowing with pride. "You are seeing the first true success of the Morrison Compact." Jake looked around at the bustling spaceport where beings from dozens of species worked side by side. It's incredible, Zeth. I never imagined anything like this was possible. Whisper's form shifted to a warm golden color as she spoke. The human Jake Morrison honors us with his presence. This world exists because of the example you set on Kepler 7 station. Jake still felt uncomfortable with the praise, but he had learned to accept it gracefully. The truth was that the Morrison Compact had grown far beyond anything he could have imagined or created on his own. These beings had taken his simple act of kindness and built something amazing with it. Over the next few days, Jake toured New Haven and marveled at what the compact species had accomplished together. He visited research facilities where Catharian energy specialists worked with Vex engineers to develop new technologies. He saw farms where multiple species had combined their knowledge to grow crops that could feed everyone in the Alliance. He toured factories where beings with completely different biology worked together to manufacture everything the compact needed to thrive. But the tour was interrupted by urgent news from the outer systems. A compact supply convoy had been attacked by Draknari Empire raiders while carrying medical supplies to a colony suffering from a plague outbreak. 3 ships had been destroyed, and dozens of beings were dead or missing. Jake joined Zeth and the other compact leaders in an emergency meeting at the Planetary Government Center. The mood in the room was somber as reports came in from the attack site. The Draknari had not just destroyed the convoy, they had also broadcast a message claiming that the Morrison Compact was harboring criminals and enemies of the Empire. "This is clearly a provocation," said Commander 6, a Vex leader whose mechanical voice carried notes of anger that Jake had never heard before. "The Draknari seek to justify future attacks against our people." Whisper's form shifted to deep purple, indicating distress. "Our convoy carried only medical supplies and food for the plague victims. The Draknari knew this, yet they attacked anyway." Jake listened to the discussion, feeling a growing sense of responsibility. The compact had been named after him, and now beings were dying because of the alliance his actions had helped create. "What are our options?" he asked. Zeth turned to him with a serious expression. "We could abandon the outer colonies and pull back to more defensible positions. We could try to negotiate with the Empire, though they have shown no interest in peaceful solutions. Or we could find a way to protect ourselves." Jake thought about the problem from an engineer's perspective. The compact had many advantages: diverse technologies, cooperative spirits, and the loyalty of beings who had been given hope for the first time in their lives. But they lacked military strength, and the major powers knew it. "What if we built our own defense force?" Jake suggested. "Not for attacking anyone, but for protecting compact ships and colonies." The room fell silent as the leaders considered this idea. The compact had been built on principles of peace and cooperation, but the recent attack had shown that sometimes good people needed to be able to defend themselves. Commander 6 spoke first. "The Vex have significant manufacturing capabilities. We could build ships if we had designs and materials." Whisper's form brightened slightly. "Ethereal technology could provide advanced sensor systems and communication networks." Zeth nodded slowly. "Catharian energy manipulation could power defensive shields and propulsion systems far more efficiently than conventional technology." Jake felt excitement building as he realized the possibilities. Each species could contribute what they do best. We wouldn't be trying to copy Empire or Federation designs. We'd be creating something entirely new. Over the following weeks, Jake found himself at the center of the most ambitious project the Morrison Compact had ever attempted. Engineers and scientists from dozens of species gathered on New Haven to design a new type of spacecraft that would combine the best technologies and ideas from every member race. The design process was unlike anything Jake had experienced in his years as an engineer. Instead of one person or company controlling the project, every species contributed equally. Vex manufacturing precision was combined with Catharian energy systems. Ethereal sensor technology was integrated with defensive systems designed by former Empire defectors who had joined the compact. Jake's role was to coordinate between the different teams and contribute human innovations in tactical systems and crew interface design. He was amazed by how much each species could teach the others, and how their different approaches to technology could be combined to create something better than any of them could build alone. The first prototype ship was completed 6 months after the Draknari attack. The vessel looked unlike anything else in the galaxy, with flowing curves that incorporated crystal technology, precise geometric sections that reflected Vex construction methods, and adaptive systems that could change configuration like ethereal, atmospheric manipulation. Jake stood in the prototype's bridge with Zeth and the other project leaders, looking at control systems that seamlessly blended dozens of different technological approaches. The ship felt alive in a way that conventional vessels never did, as if it had been grown rather than built. "What should we call it?" Whisper asked, her form glowing with satisfaction. Jake looked around at the beings who had worked so hard to create something new and better. "How about Harmony's Edge? It represents the balance between peace and the need to protect what we've built." Zeth's crystal form brightened with approval. "Harmony's Edge, the first ship of the Morrison Compact. Defense Force." As Jake activated the ship's systems for the first time, he realized that they had created more than just a new type of spacecraft. They had proven that cooperation could produce results that none of them could achieve alone, and that the principles that had started with one act of kindness could be applied to any challenge they might face. 1 year after the construction of Harmony's Edge, the Morrison Compact Defense Force had grown to 50 ships of various sizes and capabilities. Each vessel was a unique blend of technologies from different member species, creating a fleet unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Jake Morrison found himself serving as the human liaison to the fleet's command structure, working alongside Admiral Kyle Henderson, a former Earth Navy officer who had joined the Compact after becoming disillusioned with human military politics. The fleet operated from a massive space station called Unity Point, built in the asteroid belt of the Kepler system where Jake had first met Zeth years ago. The station itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, with sections designed by different species connected in a complex but functional arrangement. Catharian crystal spires provided power and communication, Vex manufacturing bays produced ships and equipment, and ethereal atmospheric zones allowed gaseous beings to work alongside solid-form species. Jake stood on the command deck of Harmony's Edge, watching through the viewports as other compact ships moved in formation around the station. Each vessel told a story of cooperation: the sleek Whisper Runner with its ethereal sensor arrays, the heavily armored Vex Defender with its precision manufacturing equipment that could repair battle damage in real time, and dozens of others that combined technologies in ways that traditional military minds found impossible to understand. Admiral Henderson joined Jake at the viewport, his weathered face showing the strain of recent intelligence reports. "The Draknari are massing a fleet at their border stations," he said quietly. "Our scouts report at least 200 warships gathering in the Draxon system. They're not even trying to hide their intentions anymore." Jake nodded grimly. The Draknari Empire had been escalating their aggression against compact territories for months, claiming that the Alliance harbored rebels and criminals. Everyone knew the real reason. The Empire feared that the compact's success would inspire other oppressed species to band together and resist Draknari expansion. "How long before they move?" Jake asked. "Days, maybe hours," Henderson replied. "Emperor Draxus has declared the Morrison Compact an enemy of the Empire. He's ordered his fleet to crush us before we can spread our influence any further." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The compact had been named after him, built on the principles he had demonstrated years ago on Kepler 7 station. Now thousands of beings who believed in cooperation and mutual aid were about to face the full military might of one of the galaxy's most powerful empires. Szeth approached them, his crystal form flickering with nervous energy. "Jake Morrison, the Compact Council has made their decision. We will not abandon our colonies or surrender to Draknari threats. If they want to destroy what we have built, they will have to fight for it." Jake looked at his old friend, remembering the dying being he had found on a remote station. Now, Szeth was one of the leaders of an alliance that spanned dozens of star systems and represented the hopes of millions of beings who had never had a voice in galactic politics before. "Are we ready?" Jake asked. Admiral Henderson's expression was grim but determined. "We have 50 ships against their 200. By conventional military thinking, we don't stand a chance. But our ships aren't conventional, and neither are our tactics." The Compact fleet had developed fighting techniques that took advantage of their diverse technologies and cooperative crew structures. Instead of the rigid formations favored by traditional militaries, Compact ships moved in fluid patterns that allowed each vessel to support the others while maximizing their unique capabilities. 3 days later, the Draknari fleet entered Compact space with overwhelming force. 200 massive warships arranged in perfect battle formations, their dark hulls bristling with weapons designed to intimidate and destroy. Emperor Draxus himself commanded the fleet from his flagship Conqueror, a massive dreadnought that could destroy entire cities with its main weapons. Jake watched from Harmony's Edge as the enemy fleet approached Unity Point Station. The Draknari ships moved with mechanical precision, following attack patterns that had conquered dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Their communications were full of boasts about crushing the rebellion and teaching lesser species their proper place in the galactic order. Admiral Henderson gave the order to engage, and the Compact fleet moved to intercept the invaders. What happened next would be remembered as the Battle of Unity Point, the first major military engagement in galactic history where cooperation triumphed over conquest. The Compact ships didn't meet the Draknari in traditional formation combat. Instead, they scattered across the battlefield in seemingly random patterns that confused the Empire commanders. Catharian vessels used their energy manipulation abilities to phase shift through enemy formations, appearing behind Draknari ships, to strike at their weakest points. Vex ships deployed swarms of repair drones that could also sabotage enemy systems, turning the Draknari fleet's own technology against them. Ethereal ships created massive sensor-blocking gas clouds that hid Compact movements while disrupting enemy targeting systems. Human-designed command ships like Harmony's Edge coordinated the chaotic-looking battle with precision that allowed every Compact vessel to know exactly where their allies were and what they were doing. Jake watched in amazement as the battle unfolded around him. The Draknari fleet, despite its superior numbers and firepower, found itself unable to effectively engage an enemy that refused to fight according to established rules. Compact ships would appear from unexpected directions, strike quickly, and then vanish into the sensor-blocking clouds before the Empire vessels could respond. The turning point came when a group of Vex ships managed to sabotage the Conqueror's main power systems using their repair drones. Emperor Draxus found his flagship drifting helplessly as smaller Compact vessels swarmed around it like insects around a giant. Instead of destroying the dreadnought, however, the Compact ship simply disabled its weapons and left it alive as a demonstration of their principles. The battle lasted 6 hours, but the outcome became clear long before the end. The Draknari fleet, trained to fight enemies who would meet them head-on, couldn't adapt to the Compact's cooperative tactics. Ship after ship was disabled or forced to retreat, until finally Emperor Draxus ordered his remaining forces to withdraw. The Draknari fleet limped away from Unity Point. Jake stood on the bridge of Harmony's Edge, surrounded by beings from a dozen different species who had worked together to achieve the impossible. They had faced overwhelming odds and won not through superior firepower, but through the kind of cooperation that Jake had demonstrated years ago when he helped a dying stranger. Admiral Henderson appeared on the main screen from his command ship, his face showing a mixture of relief and amazement. All ships report minimal casualties. The Draknari have withdrawn beyond our borders. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all kinds, we just changed the balance of power in this galaxy. Zeth placed a crystalline hand on Jake's shoulder. Your example of kindness has grown into something that can protect the innocent and defend the weak. The galaxy will never be the same. Jake looked out at the compact fleet regrouping around Unity Point Station, each ship representing a different species that had chosen cooperation over conquest. News of their victory was already spreading across the galaxy, carried by traders and travelers who would tell the story of how the Morrison Compact had defeated the mighty Draknari Empire. More. Importantly, Jake realized that they had proven something fundamental about the nature of civilization itself. When different peoples worked together, when they combined their strengths instead of fighting over their differences, they could accomplish things that none of them could achieve alone. The simple act of helping a stranger had grown into a principle that could reshape the galaxy, one act of kindness at a time. 20 years had passed since Jake Morrison first helped a dying Catharian on Kepler 7 station, and the galaxy looked nothing like it had in those days. Jake, now in his 60s with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes, stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, the massive headquarters of the Morrison Compact that orbited the jointly governed world of New Harmony. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see hundreds of ships from dozens of species docking and departing in perfect coordination. The Morrison Compact had become the galaxy's third major power, but unlike the Draknari Empire or the Centauri Federation, it operated on principles that most beings had thought impossible before Jake's simple act of kindness proved them wrong. The Compact now included over 300 species across 2,000 star systems, all united by the belief that cooperation was stronger than conquest and that helping others was the foundation of true civilization. Jake served as the Compact's chief mediator, a position created specifically for him that involved resolving disputes between member species and coordinating the massive projects that kept the Alliance functioning. His office was filled with gifts from grateful worlds, crystal sculptures from Catharian artists, precision tools crafted by Vex engineers, atmospheric paintings created by ethereal masters, and countless other treasures that represented the diversity of the Compact's membership. But the most treasured item in Jake's office was a simple holographic display that showed the current status of the Compact's humanitarian efforts. Medical ships were delivering supplies to plague-stricken worlds, engineering teams were helping struggling colonies improve their infrastructure, and research stations were developing new technologies that would benefit everyone. The display, updated constantly as new missions were launched and old ones were completed, a living testament to the power of organized kindness. Zeth entered Jake's office without ceremony, as he had been doing for decades. The young Catharian who had once been dying on a station floor was now an elder statesman of his people, his crystal form glowing with the wisdom that came from years of service to others. Despite his age and status, Zeth still visited Jake regularly to discuss the philosophical implications of what they had built together. "My old friend," Zeth said, settling into the chair designed specifically for his crystalline physiology. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had walked past me that day on Kepler 7? Jake looked up from the reports he was reviewing and smiled. "I think about it sometimes, but not with regret. I couldn't have walked past you any more than I could stop breathing. Helping people in need is just what you do. And that simple belief has changed everything," Zeth replied. "The latest reports show that 17 more species have requested membership in the Compact. The Draknari Empire has not launched a major offensive against anyone in 5 years, and the Centauri Federation has started adopting some of our fair trade practices." Jake nodded, pleased but not surprised. The Battle of Unity Point had been a turning point not just for the Compact, but for the entire galaxy. When word spread that a cooperative alliance had defeated the mighty Draknari Empire through superior tactics and teamwork, other oppressed species had begun to believe that change was possible. The aftermath of that victory had been even more significant than the battle itself. Instead of pursuing the retreating Draknari fleet and claiming conquered territory, the Compact had offered humanitarian aid to Draknari colonies that had been damaged in previous wars. The Empire's own citizens had been amazed to see their former enemies providing medical care and disaster relief without asking for anything in return. Speaking of the Draknari, Szeth continued, Emperor Draxus has requested another meeting with you. His message was quite different from his usual threats and demands. Jake raised an eyebrow. Different how? Szeth activated a small communications device, and the familiar but aged voice of the Draknari Emperor filled the room. Where once there had been arrogance and threat, now there was something Jake had never heard from Draxus before. Humility. Chief. Mediator Morrison, the recording began. I write to you not as the leader of an empire, but as someone who has witnessed the power of your alliance's principles. My people have watched as the Morrison Compact has turned former enemies into allies, transformed struggling colonies into thriving worlds, and created prosperity without conquest. I formally request that the Draknari Empire be considered for membership in your alliance. Jake sat back in his chair, stunned. The Draknari Empire, which had once seemed determined to destroy everything the Compact represented, was now asking to join them. It was a development that Jake had hoped for, but never expected, to see in his lifetime. What about the Centauri Federation? Jake asked. Szeth's crystal form brightened with amusement. Chancellor Voss sent a similar message 3 days ago. Both of the galaxy's major powers want to become part of what you started with one act of kindness on a remote station. Jake walked to his window and looked out at the busy traffic around Harmony Station. Ships from hundreds of different species moved in carefully coordinated patterns, their crews working together regardless of their biological differences or cultural backgrounds. Children from dozens of worlds played together in the stations, parks, learning languages and customs that their parents had never dreamed they would need to know. The transformation had not been easy or quick. There had been conflicts to resolve, misunderstandings to clear up, and plenty of beings who had been skeptical about whether so many different species could really work together. But Jake had learned that most conflicts arose from fear and misunderstanding, and that patient communication could solve problems that seemed impossible at first glance. Admiral Henderson appeared in the doorway of Jake's office, now showing his own years of service but still carrying himself with military bearing. Jake, we've got the preliminary results from the latest fleet exercises. The integration of former Draknari and Centauri vessels into our command structure is proceeding ahead of schedule. Jake smiled at his old friend. The Morrison Compact Defense Force now numbered in the thousands of ships, but it remained true to its founding principles. The fleet existed to protect the innocent and defend the Alliance's member worlds, but it had never been used for conquest or aggression. When conflicts arose, the Compact preferred negotiation and humanitarian aid to military solutions. Any problems with the new crews? Jake asked. Henderson shook his head. The Draknari officers are having some trouble adjusting to our cooperative command structure, but they're learning. The Centauri crews are adapting much more quickly. I think they're relieved to be part of something that isn't entirely focused on profit margins. As evening approached, Jake made his way to his favorite spot on the station, a small garden that had been built as a joint project between human landscape architects and Catharian crystal growers. The space combined earth, plants with living crystal formations that provided soft, natural lighting. It was a perfect symbol of what the Compact had achieved. Different approaches to beauty working together to create something better than either could produce alone. Jake sat on a bench made from Vex-crafted metal and ethereal-grown wood, watching, as beings from dozens of species walked through the garden together. A human child was playing with a young Catharian whose crystal form sparkled with laughter, while their parents conversed easily despite coming from worlds hundreds of light years apart. Zeth joined him on the bench, as Jake had known he would. It had become their evening ritual over the years, two old friends watching the sunset and reflecting on how far they had all come together. "Do you have any regrets, Jake Morrison?" Zeth asked, using the formal name he always employed when he was being particularly thoughtful. Jake considered the question carefully. His life had taken a path he never could have imagined when he was just a cargo ship engineer hauling mining equipment to remote colonies. He had become a diplomat, a mediator, and a symbol of what one person could accomplish by simply choosing to help others. "I regret that it took so long for everyone to learn what seemed obvious to me," Jake finally said, "that we're all better off when we help each other instead of fighting over differences that don't really matter." Zeth's form glowed with contentment. Perhaps it had to happen slowly so that it would last. Changes that come too quickly often fade just as fast, but what we have built together will endure because it grew from genuine understanding and mutual respect. As the artificial sunset painted the garden in warm colors, Jake looked around at the peaceful scene and realized that this was what he had always dreamed the galaxy could become. Different species working together, learning from each other, and building something better than any of them could create alone. It had all started with one simple decision to help a stranger in need, and Jake knew that the best was yet to come.